Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the inaugural podcast of the Heel Section. We're a group of friends and wrestling enthusiasts from all over the country. Most of us have been watching this sport for 30 plus years. We've grown up on the WWF, Mid-South, the NWA and all its territories, the WCW, the list goes on and on. Today we obsess over the WWE, Ring of Honor, Lucha Underground, and New Japan. Wrestling is our politics. Today we are joined by the heart and soul of the Heel Section, the will and the way, the last righteous man, Mr. Joshua Adcock.
Thanks, sir.
We are joined also by the master of disaster himself, the Southern dandy, Drew Parker, and my friend, in the blue corner, joining us from Augusta, GA, the smartest man in every room, Jared Hegwood. I'm this week's host. My gut's a little bit big, my ass is a little bit big, but I am bad, and they know I'm bad, Daddy. The Carolina Dream, Nicholas Bowden. All right. Gentlemen, Ryan Reeves, Ryback, last week was sent home from the WWE. He was unable to resolve contract issues. That's all we know now, but then he went online, and he posted a very lengthy, rambling blog in which he argued a few things. Once, he said that since match outcomes are predetermined, losing often should not be held against a talent when it comes to payoffs. He also said that wrestlers should be paid equally, and that apparently, other than merchandising, wrestling should be essentially socialist. Got a little bit to read here some of his exact comments.
All right.
Let's see here. Every single person who worked, this is Ryback speaking, every single person who works for the WWE from top to bottom is absolutely just as valuable as the next. The winners cannot win unless the losers go out there and agree to lose to them. Why is it that a guy who is told he is going out and to lose and does everything he's told is not only paid less, but paid much less than said winner over a period of time? Every single performer for the WWE sacrifices the same amount of time from their home and their families, and every single man or woman goes out and does what they're told. Looking at this formula, losers turn into what fans call jobbers, and their value decreases in the company's eyes, and before you know it, they get released. For what? For doing exactly as they are told. Now, Heggs, you had some very strong opinions on this. I believe the word moron was bandied about, so I'm going to go to you on this.
I wish to God they could see the expressions on his face while you were reading it.
All right, well, here's the thing. I don't know if you guys have seen the news today, but the Brooklyn Brawler was released.
Yeah, after 30 years.
After 30 years, and that guy was the ultimate jobber, wasn't he?
Pretty much.
The thing that I have against Ryback's comments is that he doesn't really seem to understand how he gets paid. If there was a match, say, with John Cena and Randy Orton, and John Cena was getting paid more by going over, and Randy Orton was being paid less, I think he may have a point. But I doubt that's the case at all. I think John Cena and Randy Orton are probably in the same bracket altogether, and it doesn't matter who wins and who loses. They get paid what they do is because they're a draw.
Right.
And Ryback is not a draw, or at least he's definitely not a draw on that level. So for him to sort of like put together this sort of false equivalency of wins and losses and jobbers and main eventers, I think it's false, because I mean, the Brooklyn Brawler may have been a jobber his entire life, but he spent 3 decades with that company. He was valuable both in the ring and outside of the ring. Value is not determined by wins and losses. It's on drawing power. And while the Brooklyn Brawler may not have won a match that I can remember, that dude got cheered and love from every single crowd he ever performed in front of. So I just don't understand where Ryback is coming from, or who he thinks he's supporting.
Mr. Joshua?
The only way I could find myself actually supporting his argument would be in the idea of like any kind of like pay-per-view checks. For instance, like they used to get bonuses at different times based on the pay-per-view buys. Now I could see a person saying, we ought to be paid equally there, but as it goes to being like all contracts should be equal and all that kind of stuff, I really couldn't find any way to identify with him on that. You don't just get paid the same because you're on the roster. If you're not drawn, that would be like saying, you mean Zack Ryder should make the exact thing as John Cena or Randy Orton or something of them. Well, he's not that level. He's not a main event talent. He's not pulling as many fans. Even though his merchandise does pretty well, when you're going into contract negotiations, I just can't see him saying, well, I think I ought to make as much as Cena. Well, yeah, if you were making that kind of money, if you were the face of the company. But otherwise, it just sounds like more of the same socialist rhetoric we hear in politics. Seems like he's kind of jumped on that bandwagon a little bit. But no, I really can't support the line of thought he's got going there.
All right. Drew, how about you? What do you think?
I think you got to take these sour grapes and start his own wine company. But I don't know. It seems like he's thinking that I guess he's thinking like the whole socialist thing with it is, and like it's like, yeah, we'll all make the same money, and your merchandising will be kind of like commission or something. And when it kind of works like that for everybody, yeah, but at the same time, you can't have, like Josh said, you can't really have somebody paid, like an upper echelon guy getting paid what he gets paid, and then have somebody like Bo Dallas or somebody like that come in and just like make the same money every night and everything. But I don't know. It's just like I said, it just sounds like sour grapes to me. Just because, like, he's like he's lost to Kalisto in a U.S. title match, like 3 times in a row now. So I mean,
do you want to? Let's.
That can be edited in post.
You with us, Jared?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. Watch the picture for a second.
Since I guess somebody's got to take the opposite side of this.
Oh dear God, please don't.
Well,
devil's advocate here.
Let me finish. Just give me a minute here.
All right.
I think, first of all, the idea that everybody should be paid equally, obviously, that's stupid.
Yes.
I think one of the biggest problems here is that this is Ryback talking.
Yeah, which is already a bad idea.
Here we have a guy who is a complete mope. He never should have been put anywhere near the main event, and he was. It's so interesting for him to talk about that because, he was put there by guys like Daniel Bryan.
Right.
Lost to him, and oh my God, never should have. But I was thinking about this. If Luke Harper goes... Poor
Luke.
You're right, Higgs?
Yeah.
Okay. If Luke Harper goes into Vince McMahon's office next week, so of course he's hurt, but he goes into Vince McMahon's office next week, and McMahon says, "Hey, you're not a draw. You're just not bringing in any money. Nobody really cares to see you anymore." And Luke Harper gets pissed about that. That I hear because Luke Harper is, without a doubt, the best big man worker they've got.
Agreed.
He is a guy who works his ass off and is great. And Ryback does have this isn't how he would put it, but I would say guys like Cena, guys like Reigns are only at that main event level making that money because guys like Luke Harper and Daniel Bryan and CM Punk lose to them.
And they make them look great.
And make them look good.
Right, right.
So for those guys, maybe not equal pay, but, a few months ago, Flair did a great podcast with Ricky Morton. And Ricky Morton talked about how back when he was basically just a jobber, every territory Flair would go to, he would give like 10% of his payoff to the guy who jobbed to him. Right? And I'm just pulling that number right here, but it was a substantial sum. He would pay them.
A sign of appreciation for doing a good job.
Yeah, but because, it just out of respect, because he recognized, hey, the guy losing, it's not like he's, I don't know, Kenny Omega, and he can wrestle a damn mannequin. I mean, the guy who's drawing the money can only draw money because there's somebody who can, frankly, most of the time make them look better than they are. Savage made Hogan look better.
Mm-hmm.
John Cena, great U.S. title run. Why? Well, because he had guys like Neville and Owens and Zayn
Cesaro
to lose to him. So that's what I'm thinking. You guys go ahead. Heggs, what do you think?
Well, my problem with that is that I think guys like Neville and Sami Zayn, etc., who are sort of early on in their careers, used as sort of like, I'd say jobbers, but those guys aren't going to be paid less forever. If they're good and the crowd, sort of like latches on to them, then they're going to start selling merchandise, and that's going to be the metric for how their contract is going to be renegotiated. Mm-hmm. I think like the only way that this really sort of like makes sense is in the case of like a squash match. If some big face just rolls over some annoying that little heel or vice versa. That's the only time in which two guys are paired together that are paid radically different. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, from a mid-card to main event, it's not that big. It's not that big a deal. And if you're in the mid-card, you're there for a reason, and you understand that you're working your way up. So, I just can't get behind Ryback's comments. I think.
Sorry about that.
All right. Josh, what do you think?
I'm right in line with you. I mean, the idea of equal pay and all that stuff just it really doesn't make any sense. And like I said, going back to what I said about pay-per-views, if someone is getting paid like quote unquote a loser's purse, that's an antiquated system. That was back in the days of actual prize fighting. You had a guy that legit won, so he got paid more. The guy that legit lost got paid less. But this isn't that. The matches are predetermined. They know how it's going to go. So in that regard, the only way I could see someone arguing for equal pay would be in the specific payouts on the pay-per-view shows or whatever they want to call them these days. They're no longer pay-per-views. They're special events. But, I understand, in that regard, I could see them getting paid the same amount because they had a match at a pay-per-view. But in general, no. Not even a little.
Yeah, and let's be honest. Anybody who was sort of like stuck in the lower bracket of pay, anyone who stayed down there did so because they weren't able to connect with the audience on that level, and they weren't able to sort of like move on up.
They never improved.
So I just, if you can't improve, then that's it. I mean,
but we've got a history for a decade of people connecting with the audience, and then just being. They just get disappeared. I mean, it's like, is it Luke Harper's fault that he hasn't connected with the audience, right? I mean, they trust that guy. There's a reason they had him wrestle Lesnar.
Yeah.
Because they knew, he was the guy to do it.
Yeah.
That's true, but it's a free market. The guy, if he's unhappy with his position, then he can go to TNA or Evolve or anywhere else and make a trade off the fact that he's named in the WWE. But if you're going to play in the big leagues, then you're going to abide by how the big leagues make their money, and they make their money by selling tickets to attractions. Yep. And John Cena is an attraction.
Yeah, but couldn't you argue that he only became an attraction because he had guys that could make him look better than he is?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not like Daniel Bryan's at the top of the card. A guy who's like a world-class worker. And Cena is good. I'm not knocking that. But I mean, he's only... How can I put this? Luke Harper's good against Sheamus. Roman Reigns is not good against Sheamus.
No.
That's true, but Ryback's arguing that, that everybody should be paid the same. There's a difference between a guy who's great and that isn't given a chance. I mean, that's shitty. But I think, again, that's something that you're going to find in any sort of business. No. This is just again, this is the free market.
See, what I'm afraid of is if they start getting into the equal pay type thing, you'll end up having the same kind of problem that WCW did with the familiar lands clause that all those guys had, that if somebody ends up coming in and making up more than the guys that had just come in, they get raised to that pay. So in other words, anytime WWE were to give a raise, if everybody were being paid the same, then that meant everybody across the board gets a raise, which raises labor costs, the cost per show, that kind of thing. And that's kind of what I would be afraid of to an extent, because I don't think they can afford to pay everybody the exact same thing anyway. They've been trimming the budget for years. I mean, we see less pyros than we've ever seen before. The stages for, pay-per-views and stuff like that are just a rearrangement of the same video boards they use for Raw and SmackDown. So in this time that they've been cutting back costs and everything like that, to put everybody on the same level would raise their overall cost in the long run, and it would end up costing the audience more than it would cost them. Of course, that could also lead to a lot more talent being released more often.
Yeah.
And, you can only release so much talent, because let's think about it for just in these terms. Right now, well, I say right now, in the last couple of months, they had the situation where there were enough guys on the injured reserve that they were within 5 men of being able to have a Royal Rumble made up literally of only injured people. So if they decrease the roster size because everybody's getting paid the same, and then you end up with the number of injuries we've got right now, suddenly you almost just about don't have enough guys to put on a show. And, so it's kind of a balancing act. You can't pay them all.
It's good that you brought that up, because moving on here, injuries.
Yeah.
Apparently, all of a sudden, working for the WWE has become about as dangerous as being an Arctic whaler.
Yeah.
Since last November, we lost Seth Rollins.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, Daniel Bryan.
Mm-hmm.
We've lost Randy Orton, Daniel Bryan. We lost John Cena, Daniel Bryan, Neville, Cesaro, who recently returned,
Thank God.
Luke Harper, and oh my God, Daniel Bryan is never going to wrestle again. Sweet Jesus, help us.
There you go.
And oh my God, and Payback, Enzo Amore.
In 2 minutes.
There was 5 minutes where we were all worried that man was dead.
Well, I mean, when he went out, man, his eyes were crossed and his arms, his arms were completely straight. He looked like he was in rigor.
What do you guys? What's behind? Because I don't hear about this massive rash of injuries on the indie scene, and we hear all the time the WWE style is safer, it's safer, and yet we have all these people getting hurt. And let's go to Drew, because Drew, what do you think on this?
Well, one thing is I think
what's behind these injuries? Is it just dumb luck? Is there a flaw in the system? What do you think?
I think it's a little of column A, B, C through Z, basically. Like the workload, the amount of work they have to do at house shows, everything. That, and you've got a lot of guys kind of bringing some of their indie stuff into the WWE,
like the apron bumps.
And there's a lot more high impact, slams, suplexes, everything like that nowadays. So I mean, like, guys are just going through a lot more, slamming and just getting themselves hurt just from the workload and how often they're having to do all this at house shows and whatnot, because it's just...
I mean, you look back at the old school matches. There were a lot less slams as opposed to holds and things like that. You're having guys that are making impact more often, and so it's taking a bigger toll over a short amount of time. Because, I mean, look back at the stuff that we saw in the 90s and stuff like, and especially like the 80s and the NWA scene and all that. There were lots of rest holds. There were not near as many, belly-to-belly suplexes and stuff coming off the top rope and going through tables.
I was going to say, one of the only guys coming off the top rope back then was Flair, and he was getting slammed on his hip.
There you go.
I mean, like, one of the moves that I see nowadays that I'm just like, how has nobody gotten hurt by this yet, is Owens' like package side suplex thing off the top rope.
Yeah, where he does that fisherman sideways slam and basically almost drops them on their shoulders.
I mean, every time I see that, I'm like, yep, somebody's going to get hurt from that badly.
Of course, at least Owens is a really good professional, and, I think he does take steps to make sure he doesn't hurt anyone.
Well, we hope
Well,
so.
the fact that he was able to use the package pile driver for so long, which every time I see looks like he's killing a man,
Yeah.
and he
Yes.
doesn't. That amazes me,
Yeah.
and that's part of the art of it. Heggs, what do you think? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I don't know because I mean you bring up the package pile driver. I mean, how long were pile drivers part of the business?
True.
How long were they, just part of everyone's sort of repertoire? But now they're banned because because of worries of concussions and other sort of like spinal injuries.
Yeah, I think also
But,
getting dropped on his head kind of did that for WWE.
Say again?
I think like when Stone Cold got dropped on his head by Owen Hart, I think that was pretty much the last nail in the coffin, so to speak, for the pile driver in WWE.
Yeah, so I have no idea what it is. A lot of it is sort of like dumb luck. The spot with Enzo at Payback.
Yeah.
I think that that was just a freak occurrence.
Yeah. Of course, you
And
saw the
you can't
lambasting
really-
Austin gave him, didn't you?
But I was watching Payback with my kids, and I always sort of like watch the show ahead of time before I sit down with them. And they're big Enzo they're big Enzo and Cass fans. And when Enzo sort of like hits the rope and his eyes go crazy, I didn't really sort of like warn them about it. I wanted them to see that this is a dangerous job.
This can happen.
And just as in with football and any other contact sport, I want to be in.
Yep.
I don't know, what is causing like this current slate of injuries. I don't think that it's anything inherent in the WWE system. I don't think it's anything inherent in the very real tradition of house shows. It's weird. I think it's just bad luck.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this, and I remember about a year ago I heard Jay Briscoe in an interview, and he and Mark were being courted by the WWE for NXT, very seriously, and they re-signed with Ring of Honor, and he straight up said the reason that he did that was because of workload.
Mm-hmm.
He said the dates that he has to perform with Ring of Honor are so much less, and the money is pretty good, and he works far less every year. And I wonder if our good friend Jay has talked about this, that there's so much, they perform so much, and there's absolutely no off season. Of course, there's not for any professional wrestling promotion except Lucha Underground, but then they have to, there's so much pressure on them to keep these spectacular bodies. That's why, I wonder if they're all going down to shoulder injuries because they've all got to have massive pecs because they're just pumping iron constantly. My God, how many shoulder injuries have we had? Randy Orton,
Oh my God.
Cesaro, Sami Zayn.
Yeah.
Tommy.
I don't know. That's what I would think. If there is the reason this is happening to the WWE, that would seem to me to be why.
Well, I think it's ironic though that Briscoe said that, considering I think every promotion's goal is to reach what reach the same extent of influence that the WWE has. For the longest time, the end goal for TNA was house shows, touring. They wanted to get out of Orlando. They wanted to get out of Memphis. They wanted to take the show on the road. That's the ideal. So I think I don't know if Briscoe is being sort of honest with himself, because I think that his employers want to tour. They want to to have that sort of impact on the on the industry. They want to be considered a player, and that's one of the ways that you're sort of like gauged.
So I guess maybe what you're getting at is like he stayed there with the idea that it'll only be just a show every now and again, but what happens when it becomes that they're trying to tour like WWE does, and then they're in that situation? Do you think maybe it'll make a difference for them then? It's like, if we're going to be touring all the time, we might as well go where the money is, or do you think they just genuinely love ROH?
I don't know, because I don't know how Briscoe is being how he's taking his bookings. I'll at least give him this: he has the ability to pick and choose when he wrestles, full time, when he wants to take, a vacation.
Yeah.
But you look at the guys who are in Combat Zone or Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, they're going to work as many dates as they can because they want to sort of get the exposure that allows them to get the WWE money,
right?
So they make a real living off of what it is that they're doing and retire. I really hope that Jay Briscoe and his brother are able, to eventually sort of step away from the ring. So
I don't want to see them wrestling in their Dory Funk years at 74 and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I have one more thing to add about the injuries, and this is just kind of shot in the dark, kind of weird thing, but in my head, nobody gets stretched and tortured like they used to in all the training and bringing up as like with Ranganya and all those guys.
Or like the dungeon with the hearts.
the dungeon with the hearts. Nobody really gets stretched to their limits anymore. I kind of feel like that could be a reason why there are more injuries nowadays.
Well, they don't know their limits, and so that when they go to them, that's interesting.
Right.
All right.
That Drew makes me think of. It's like in the what we sort of refer to as the golden years of the NFL. Guys played through injuries. If they had a concussion, they kept right on playing. They had a broken arm, they kept on playing. And in today's league, as soon as they get sort of as soon as their bell is rung, they're going to be
sidelines.
Sidelines, and I think the same thing is true for the WWE. I think they're so sort of careful in terms of taking care of their workers' bodies that we just hear about them more than.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And they're protecting them more. So it could be that just a lot of these injuries we're hearing about 10, 15 years ago, they just kept going.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. Okay. In the last week we had what our good friend Jay called one of the great bloodletting days of the last 4 years. The WWE released Damien Sandow, Wade Barrett, Zeb Coulter, who I will only call Dutch Mantel.
Thank you.
And let's see, Cameron and 4 others. Thank God Cameron's gone.
Yeah. Well,
my God.
That she was
per
one of
our
the ones
discussion
that jumped
earlier,
on Ryback's
we can all agree we're glad that Ryback's gone, right? All of here. So what do we think about this? Josh, we'll go to you. Your thoughts on on Sandow and Barrett being released?
Barrett was snake bit. I mean, the guy had all kinds of potential, but man, every time he got in an almost main event spot, it was a shoulder or an elbow or something. And I mean, it's almost Stevie Richards level bad. Every time the man got to where he could be on top, holy crap, he injured something. And I feel bad for him in that regard because the guy had mic ability. The guy had presence. He was not absolutely jacked like some of the guys are, but he was definitely not a weakling. I think Barrett's is just a case of bad luck, and anytime he was getting booked the right way, he'd get injured. For Sandow?
Yeah, Sandow.
Oh, sweet Jesus. They just dropped the ball. That man was, every crap gimmick they handed him, he took that crap and spun it right into gold. And every time he got over, it's like, all right, let's see if we can give him an even crappier gimmick and see if he can do that. And lo and behold, he did it. And then they had lightning in a bottle with this guy, and they let it go.
What's sad is with the last gimmick that they said didn't get over, it didn't get over because they were doing this megastars thing, and Hogan went and dropped a certain word, and that just put the kibosh on the whole megastars thing.
They could have let him keep doing the Macho Mandow thing. He was doing great with it.
Yeah.
But there again, with the Hogan thing kind of ruining Axel's Axelmania thing.
Yeah.
But I just see Sandow as one of those guys that I hope to God that he goes to the Indies, he gets a little more under him a little bit. They see that he, is capable of carrying a good main event match in some other company, and that maybe we'll get lucky and see him come back in and get the run he ought to have had. And losing to a one-armed John Cena, for God's sake.
Yeah, what did they give him the briefcase for?
Exactly.
That was just. Heggs, what do you think?
in terms of bloodletting, I've seen worse years, but even then, I think most of the time I'm rarely surprised
Right.
by by who's let go.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sort of like indie darlings who who are talented and that don't get the push, and they're sort of like let go. And my heart's not too broken over it. I didn't really see the upside of Drew Galloway, for example. I think he's one of the most highly overrated guys on the independent scene today. But man, Sandow, that's really sort of awful. The guy had everything.
Yep.
But unlike Barrett, he never really got the push.
No, he didn't.
No, not at all. And where Zack Ryder was, is in this sort of like horrible catch-22, where the more over he is, the more seemingly disliked he is by creative. Sandow had it worse in that creative is like utterly apathetic. They just didn't even care. It didn't matter how much the crowd cheered for him or not.
And see, that's
I
a
wish
shame.
best of luck. But Barrett's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And Sandow's okay, but I think Sandow is like a real loss.
Yep.
I just started watching wrestling again when he was doing the sort of intellectual savior of the masses gimmick.
Uh-huh.
And every single time he would walk out, I would look to see if he had a mic in his hand. And if he did, I would turn to my wife and I'd say, "Ooh, hot damn, Sandow's about to talk." I saw him at a house show it was about a month before WrestleMania 30. And he came out and they gave him like 7 minutes. And he worked that crowd. He played it like a fiddle. It was great. I can tell you, as good as he was on television, I don't know if you guys saw him live, from the one time I saw him, he was fantastic. He was even better than we saw him on TV. So I think it's just a damn shame too. All right, let's talk booking. So Raw Monday Night was definitely a show that was on television. That's one thing we can certainly say. So the first thing I wanted to mention here was, what do you guys think of sort of the new reality television show segment? Keeping up with the McMahons. Because this is what it feels like to me. We've got Big Daddy telling Stephanie and Shane that they've got to work out their issues.
Right.
You kids play together well now.
Heggs, what do you think about this? The other night, you seem to be very for this entire arrangement. You go ahead and you tell us what you think.
It's not the arrangement so much as it seemed like every single match made sense from a storyline perspective. Everything sort of like advanced the plot's a little bit more and more. It's not the McMahons that I'm taken with. It's the fact that this is yet another chapter in the McMahon's saga that I haven't seen before, and I think that they're playing it really, really well with this slow burn Stephanie turn. The thing is, the McMahons are going to be part of the show. You just got to sort of let that go. They were the focus that really allowed them to retake the lead from WCW, and they're not going to forget that. They're going to keep the notion of a evil authority figure in their back pocket for as long as that company's going to go. I really enjoy having a face. I think Shane is doing a terrific job with it, but I don't think it's so much the McMahons that people are getting tired of. They're getting tired of the McMahons in a particular role, and we're seeing it we're seeing a different dynamic now, and it's one that I'm really sort of invested in now.
See, it seems like for the first time in almost 20 years, the dichotomy. The rivalry is not a particular wrestler versus the company. It seems to be more about wrestling other wrestlers and for belts, for titles, as opposed to I'm trying to get back at the authority, or the authority screwed me over, so I'm going to thwart their plans. It's the first time in a long time that has not been the focus That it's not us versus the company, and that needed to go.
Like facilitating it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean that the idea that they were always against the company, that had needed to go for a long time.
Yeah.
It just got stale. You know, how often can you keep having the same authority figures? All right, now we're screwing over this guy, but it's just like when you did the same thing to this guy or this guy or this guy. At least it's something fresh. I don't know. I mean, you can always tell when you're looking at Stephanie, you just know any minute in the back of her head she's going, all right, now he's out of the room. Now it's time for me to be the, queen bee I know I can be. It just doesn't feel real. And it may not, it's probably not supposed to.
I don't think it is.
Yeah.
Well, I see. Go ahead, Drew.
The thing that I like the most about it is the fact of, we saw him Monday night with Jericho coming back there. Steph, did you see what happened out there? Did you see what they did to me out there? And he's trying to get all in her back pocket and everything, and she's just like, you got a problem with it. Settle it in the ring. And that's what I like about it nowadays. No more backstage politicking like, oh, it's okay, baby. We take care of you. Come on. It's just like, whoa. You got an issue. You got a problem.
Go fix it.
Settle it in the ring. Yep. Like with the Ryder and Owens match, and just like the Zayn and who'd he beat to get into the Fatal 4-Way?
The Miz.
Yeah, the Miz. Oh, he beat the Miz to get it. Yeah, okay, there you go. See, and like with him beating the Miz to get it, you earn your spot nowadays instead of just being like, well, I've been here for 15 years, I deserve it.
Well, if you've been here 15 years and ain't earned it by now,
Yeah, well, that's just the difference between good storytelling and bad. Because I think the purpose of those sort of backstage authority type segments, it's supposed to facilitate what the two wrestlers in the ring are supposed to be doing. It allows for that feud to be complicated in new and interesting ways. It shouldn't be the focus of the show, but it definitely should be part of it. And yeah, I think you're right, Drew. The way that they're sort of handling it right now is it's putting the spotlight on the feud on the feuds in the ring rather than the feuds in the back.
Yeah. I hate this. I hate it so bad. I hate it so much. And now every single thing you guys have said is you have made great points. And there is a lot. Let me tell you the one thing about this. And I love Shane. I think he's great. I think Stephanie is amazing. I think she's wonderful, marvelous. They have a way of talking down to their own talent those segments that but it's not. It doesn't put the talent over. It's like all of a sudden I'm watching Stephanie and it's nothing but ego. It's not that part of it is not to facilitate a new story, which Heggs, you're absolutely right. The whole segment, the idea of it backstage does, but the way it's like Jericho is a heel, and he has just had his balls cut off and handed to him, and he had to now go back out and try to. How am I supposed to take him seriously? When Shane does that to a heel, how am I supposed to take them seriously? William Regal in NXT does all of these things that you were saying as far as facilitating the story, moving a story along, but the talent doesn't lose any razzle-dazzle or heat. I still think Samoa Joe's a monster, right? I still think Finn Balor has magical demon powers. and they just, it's nothing but ego. That's what I think. Heggs?
Well, the thing is, with Chris Jericho, his heel persona is that of being like a spoiled, pedant. And I don't think he was hurt at all. I think the fact that he goes to Stephanie and he sort of whines and complains and she puts him in his place and he sort of pouts about it, that's the kind of heel he is. Yeah. She's not going to do that to Brock Lesnar. I've never seen anybody do that to Brock Lesnar. For that kind of heel, that was perfect. And that's all I want. I want heels to be treated the way that they should be based on their gimmick, and the same thing for faces.
Yeah.
All right. Next, New Blood. Since Mania, we've been treated to debuts by Enzo and Cass, Apollo Crews, Baron Corbin, the Vaudevillains, and most consequently, in my opinion, Gallows and Anderson.
Yeah.
Before Mania, of course, we had Sami Zayn and AJ Styles. For me, this has been amazing. It is the reason that I am still high on WWE right now, despite many reservations. I've loved it. I thought it was great. How do you guys think this is going over with the non-hardcore audience? Drew, we'll go to you on this one. What do you think?
With the non-hardcore audience.
Yeah,
AKA
like
the
that,
women.
that mom
AKA,
who,
yeah, I was about to say the
has
mom
no
and the
idea who
kids in the
Apollo Crews
audience.
is. You know? Like,
Okay, yeah.
what do you think?
I think some of them are going over the way they want to, like, you know, with Zayn coming in, AJ coming in. Because kids are all, and I know, I'm just saying this because when I was a kid and first saw anybody like Rey Mysterio, and good God help me for saying this, I was young and dumb, don't hold it against me. When I saw X-Pac or the Kid or whatever he was back in the day when he beat Razor Ramon, I was just ecstatic. Because, you know, I just thought it was so cool that this little guy was out there and he beat a bigger guy. Well, that's the thing is I think most kids, I know, everybody hates X-Pac. I don't like him either.
In fact, Edward's brain just imploded.
I was a kid, I didn't know better. I was like 10.
Yeah,
But,
Well, hey, that was a really great and important idea at the time. Just because you don't like, you know, X-Pac, just that idea that on their show, this guy, because you remember when I would watch, you know, WWE Saturday Morning Wrestling.
Oh yeah.
It was always like Dino Bravo would come out and he would fight, you know, like James Willingham.
Some dude that got out of the audience.
Job.
David Baba Ganoush.
Never see him again. It was just generic wrestler in blue tights.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, that great thing with Razor Ramon was, hey, what if one of those job wrestlers? Oh my God, they won!
Mhm.
Barry Horowitz.
It's everything. That was brilliant.
Barry Horowitz,
Anyway,
for
you were
instance.
saying, go ahead.
But see, that's the thing I was talking about. Like, I'm not comparing X-Pac and Zayn at all. Do not take it that way. But I'm just saying, like,
Yeah,
that's
go
the
ahead.
thing. Is like Zayn and guys like that, like Zayn, Neville, Kalisto, all these guys, they can get over with kids and everything really well because they've kind of got the Daniel Bryan everyman kind of thing where they're just like, you know, it's like they're really, really good at what they do, and at the same time, you can take them as winning and everything. Both as, but we're on the same token. These same non-hardcore fans are really going to get into what they want them to be into with Corbin. They're going to hate that man. Because he's out there.
I do.
And he just, you know, he expects to win. He expects everything with his 40-foot arms and everything, you know. And it just, I think a lot of the non-hardcore crowd is kind of getting into it, and I think that's what they were afraid of with bringing a lot of these guys up was, oh, well, I don't think they're going to like all these guys because they don't know them and they haven't paid attention to them and everything. They haven't seen them on the indies, but lo and behold, a lot of these guys are getting over. It's just a lot of the booking is what's hamstringing them.
Were you just channeling Kevin Dunn? Sorry.
Yeah.
Josh, you go
Sorry,
ahead.
did I go bucktooth for a second?
Sort of the new blood in the WWE. What are your thoughts?
Ah, man, I couldn't be happier.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm hoping that the crowd will take to them the way that the hardcore audience does, because they're not just bringing up filler. They're bringing up guys that have ability. Zayn is great in the ring, can tell a phenomenal story. Neville is incredible to watch. I mean, he's done stuff that I just go, how did that not break his legs? You know, I mean, all kinds of stuff. Right now, it's a good thing. They needed the new blood. What I'm more concerned about is what's going to happen when all those guys that are currently on the injuries reserve come back and want their spot back. And these guys have moved up a little bit. Are they going to let them actually start having feuds with these new guys, or are they going to turn around and go, okay, now you're back down the card because we got Orton back. You know.
Thank God we've got a 3-hour show every Monday night.
And yet they managed
They
to
won't be
still
wanting
leave
for
people out.
time, so.
You know, they got 3 hours, and yet you got a show like NXT that does more with 1 hour than the main flagship show does in 3.
And 15 minutes.
Yeah, 3 hours and a run over, and NXT does more with it than that. So, you know, if these guys can come up, and if they can get past the pitfalls that have befallen other NXT guys that have come up, like I cite the Ascension. There you go. You know, they went undefeated and were basically the baddest thing walking the black and yellow back, you know, ropes and everything, and then they come over to the WWE main card, and have they won? That was actually anybody that wasn't a jobber. Now I know like they won against like their first 2 matches were nobodies, and they won those. But the first time they got
I think there was one of those. It was the tag team. They scored a pinfall at the elimination chamber.
yeah,
I think they did
yeah,
that.
okay.
Hey, Heggs, what do you think about this? Sort of all the, are you marking out like the rest of us are? What are your thoughts?
First, let me say that X-Pac is a phenomenal athlete.
Oh my!
He just couldn't get over to save himself.
No.
And X-Pac, man.
And literally in an indie show, busted his ass for the business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in regards to the new blood, I was sort of like thinking about this during Raw the other night, because we keep being told it's a new era, new era, new era, and I realized that I didn't know who else would be in those matches if the NXT graduates had sort of like if they weren't on television. I mean, really, who are we going to get more of? I don't think that the problem with the WWE is a 3-hour show. I started watching again seriously during the Monday Night War when WCW was putting on a pretty great 3-hour show every single night.
Yeah.
They just knew how to use their wrestlers and how to build storylines that sort of like crossed over, and it all made sense. I'm really, really happy to see like Zayn and Neville, Owens, in the in the big leagues. I never really sort of like doubted that they could do it. I think this is just Vince realizing that the industry has sort of like moved past him.
Yeah.
Because it's not a question. I don't think that there is too much of a difference between a hardcore fan anymore and the regular sort of like person who goes to buy tickets for Raw. I think that the sort of like regular viewer that exists in Vince's mind, the one that sort of like doesn't know who the wrestlers are, but they just want a good wrestling show, I think that those are like few and far between now. I think most people understand that there's an independent wrestling scene and they hear about these things. Maybe the moms don't know, maybe the dads don't know, but I'm pretty damn sure that the teenagers do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the college age kids do. So yeah, I mean, like Josh was saying, I never doubted that they would be able to sort of like step into that role. I think that was only ever sort of like Vince. So I'm really happy to see them, because whether it's the everyday sort of appeal of Sami Zayn, the sort of like old school brawler that Owens brings in, or even Cesaro's sort of like suave European gimmick, I think Cream comes to the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And about Cesaro's like 007, I love that.
Oh,
I love it so
great.
much.
Yeah, it looks
Oh
good.
my
So
God.
great.
Like, and he has needed something like that. That was literally the only thing he didn't have.
Yeah.
Just something, because he's not a guy. He doesn't need to talk a lot. Not everybody needs to talk a lot, but just he needed to have something that was his, that was not just he's this guy who's a great worker and he walks down to the ring and wrestles.
Yeah.
My optimism for this whole new approach they're taking, and I do think it's a new approach, began with him, because you had, McMahon sort of infamously using him as the example of the guy that doesn't reach for the brass ring, and then he teams up with, he goes from nothing, right?
Yeah.
He goes from just being nothing but a guy they were kind of pushing, and then he was a jobber again. He teams up with Tyson Kidd. They get over.
Huge.
Kidd gets hurt.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, here's where I knew they really turned on Cesaro. It wasn't that he stopped losing, because he didn't. He lost to Cena. He lost to Reigns. He lost to Orton. But he lost to him in 20-minute matches that he led. And the whole damn time, all Cole, Saxton, and JBL talked about was how amazing he was. That's when I knew that, and I had been watching, I remember hearing you guys talk about Cesaro and saying, wait, what's the big deal about this guy? And it was because he was working a heel style. I didn't, you guys were just saying, no, that this guy was amazing when he was in Ring of Honor. And then when they flipped the switch on him, they turned him babyface. And I just sort of imagine backstage him almost going to McMahon and saying, hey, listen, just let me do what I can do.
Yes.
I'll put over anybody you want. I'll lose every damn week. Just let me do what I can do well.
Right.
And it's worked.
Yeah.
And so, like, the fact that they did that tells me that I feel good about Zayn. I feel good about Owens. And even though with my dislike of Roman Reigns, I feel very good about AJ. Which, speaking of which, sort of the last thing on my list here of things I want to talk as far as booking goes. Let's get down to brass tacks here. AJ Styles loses at WrestleMania. He lost at Payback. He will lose at Extreme Rules.
Probably.
And we've got the family versus the club, which is the shittiest thing ever. The club, really, come up with something. Something. Come up with something.
Oh, they will when they put Balor's name in front of it.
So there's all that, but we have had amazing matches. It's a story I think we've all agreed we really care about. A brand new thing where Reigns and Uso shitty are actually being heelish. So what do we think of what's going on in this whole scene, which I think I have mixed feelings about. Heggs, what do you think?
Well, I think Josh can sort of attest to this. I've been an AJ fan, like a huge mark for AJ for as long as I think he's been like, the it guy at TNA. I remember watching his Ring of Honor matches and, just loving him. He was the guy that I went to, without a doubt, 90% of the time whenever we played the game. I love AJ, so I'm thrilled that he's in this position. It's something that I never thought I would ever see. We used to talk about how incredibly long the odds were that he would ever, be in the WWE, let alone in the main event wrestling for the belt.
Seemed about as likely as it would have for Sting until they, finally did that.
So I'm thrilled, and I don't see any upside to the Usos at all, outside of appealing to sort of families and kids. I've been really pleased with the last two matches that Reigns has had with AJ, and I don't think he gets enough sort of credit for that. All in all, I'm very, very happy. I don't even necessarily agree that AJ is going to lose at Extreme Rules. I think that there's still an outside chance that he's the one that turns heel because that's what Vince wants. I've been just, wowed by the whole thing. And if they could just sort of divorce the family from, this feud, I think that I would be, completely over the moon for it. But right now, I can't say that I'm disappointed.
No, it's been looking good. I like the feud, even though I've always caught myself as being completely disinterested in the Usos, and I think Reigns is pretty flat and very limited in the scope of his ability, but they finally seem to have come up with an angle here that maybe they can pull something out of him, more than this, well, I'm not the bad guy, I'm not a good guy, I'm the guy. It's always so damn flat. And
God, don't you hate it? My God.
Yeah,
it's so terrible.
You could get more emotion out of Stephen Hawking's voice machine than you could out of Roman Reigns in most cases.
Yeah, and it's ironic because the tweener role, I think, is the hardest one to pull off. Being able to sort of play both sides, it takes a lot of skill, a lot of charisma, and
he has
Reigns being set up to fail. And it's just bizarre that this is the way that they're sort of pushing it.
Well, that's like what I mentioned on the board and everything. It was that he hell, I lost my thought.
I don't know, man. I'm not in your head.
Drew will go to you while Josh recollects himself.
Yeah, I got lost for a second.
One thing I want to say about Reigns that I can't stand is as soon as the Shield breaks up, it's all right, Roman, you're going right to the top. And it's just he didn't even have a US run, an IC run, nothing. It was just instant, boom, skyrocket straight to the belt.
And it was such a wasted opportunity. It's because I thought at WrestleMania 31, what he should have been doing, he shouldn't have been wrestling for the heavyweight championship. He shouldn't have won the Royal Rumble. He should have been the guy to put Rusev down.
Yep.
They had built Rusev for a solid year as this unstoppable heel.
Yep.
And then you have and Reigns could have come out and he could have done the whole thing. Hey, you know what? My family came to this country and it's been pretty damn good to us, so shut your mouth. And people would have gone nuts for it.
Yep.
It was, and then they could have had him go over this past WrestleMania, which they did anyway. The only difference was, in my way, he would have been cheered.
Yeah.
You know?
I remember
all the humility.
I remember what I was going to say.
Go ahead.
Reigns is that's what I said on the board. Reigns is the only guy I have ever seen shoot for the tweener spot. You know, you have other guys that they've been on either side of the fence at different times, and if they became a tweener, they worked there, like for Austin or Rocky or somebody like that. If they came out and, I dare say Austin could put a stunner on God, and I think they'd cheer. But they worked to attain that status. Reigns, on the other hand, is like shooting to be a tweener, and I don't think I've seen anyone aim for that particular position so blatantly. You know, I mean, even in that catchphrase I said a minute ago, I'm not a good guy, I'm not a bad guy, I'm the guy. That's basically saying I'm a tweener. You know,
that's a good point.
I've just never seen anyone make it their mission to be a guy that straddles the fence. All the other ones have ended up that way, not purposely ended up that way.
Yeah, they charismatic heels who were put into positions that allow them to be the face of justice, if not like strong moral codes. They're going to be the good guys that we deserve.
Well, I mean, like, think about Rocky. When Rocky finally got quote unquote face status with the fans was when he went out there and tried to single-handedly take on Taker and Kane, who had just laid waste to, I think it was Austin. And he comes out there and he tries to take them both on, and even though it was obvious he was going to get his ass handed to him, the crowd developed some kind of a love for the idea that this guy would go out there and try, like, he was enough of a man to go out there and be like, yeah, that's Taker and Kane, but they ain't gonna do me like that. And he kind of started getting over with the crowd a little bit at that point. That's kind of what seemed to have gotten him over. But, like I said, that falls into what I've been saying. He was a bad guy. He did something. The crowd kind of accepted him for that. Reigns, on the other hand, is just like, I want to be in the middle.
Yeah, and
Was it so much that he wants to be in the middle, or is it that I don't think this guy? I think this guy is. He's doing exactly what he's told.
Oh yeah,
and I think
he's a puppet.
Yeah, go ahead, Hags. You were gonna say?
No, I was gonna say I completely agree. And the thing is, I think I said a few minutes ago, and Josh was just sort of echoing my idea. They started off as heels. Austin was not a good guy.
No.
Rocky, he only got over once he turned.
Yeah.
So
when he was with the Nation.
Reigns is starting off as a face and trying to put this extra edge on him, and it's not working. And it like you said, Nick, it reeks of calculation behind the scenes. That Vince, who's got a team of marketing experts in there who have analyzed hours and hours of WWE footage, and they're saying you need to do this, this, and this, and this, and he's overproduced, and I feel really bad for the guy because he's got a good look. I don't think that he's talentless. He's just he's the machine, sort of being turned back on his creator.
I did kind of feel bad for him, but and this is why I keep pushing. I think especially last week with his beatdown of AJ, he's the biggest heel in the company.
Oh yeah,
currently,
I mean, he is the biggest. Whether they want him to be or not, the goal is to. The thing that has flipped for me is back when he was wrestling Sheamus, and then at WrestleMania when he wrestled Triple H. I didn't give a shit about it. I didn't care.
Right.
I didn't want to see it. I'm skipping the house show he's doing because it's him and Sheamus. But all of a sudden, and it's not just because I love AJ Styles, it's not just because I love the club, it's because now I would boo Reigns because I didn't want to see him. Now it's flipped, and I want to see him lose. I know he won't, and that's kind of spoiling it for me.
But when he finally does,
oh my God,
man.
am I going to mark out? But the way he's carrying himself, I wonder if he's not sort of going against kind of what he's told, because to me, the way he acted last week is absolutely heelish.
Yep.
Oh,
You know, and I kind of don't know where they're going with it, but for the first time in a while, I'm interested.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Reigns kind of strikes me as like the last guy that they're trying to hang on to for like the PG type era type dude, you know?
Yeah.
The guy that they're just overly producing in the back, like, this is what you say, this is what you do, you know? Because like all the other guys, it's like, all right, let's go out there and do it. But like with him, they've got to basically coddle him, it seems, you know, to get him to get over and everything.
I'm surprised we haven't seen Mike Adamley style cue cards in his hand.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, if you think about think about before Rollins got hurt, and compare his title reign to Reigns's. And at the time, we were all kind of ticked about it, and you know, and he wasn't booked well at all. But if you think about that in retrospect, he would go out there and they would give him the first 15 minutes of every show. They would have him come back for multiple segments. They had him double main event back to back with John Cena and Sting. That's trust.
Yeah.
They trusted that guy. Reigns, they do everything they can to keep him off TV.
Yeah.
And I think that says something about what they actually think of.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, got X-Pac heat.
Oh, he does.
And, yeah, and they're trying to to make use of it. I think they're finding some success, but yeah, it's just a losing situation.
Well, to sort of wrap things up, connected to that, what do we think about Gallows and Anderson? Them bringing them in and how they've used them, so on.
Happy. Totally. Completely.
I think it kind of puts a little bit of a wet blanket on the face status of AJ, because the crowd wants to cheer him. I mean, like you heard when they came out the other night, Gallows and Anderson came out, they were boos. AJ came out, they were cheers. So, you know, I like the way they're being used there, but you know, it's kind of obvious they're going to end up being heels.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is, I mean, I think that for the first time in a long time, they've got a real sort of like NWO quality stable coming in.
Right.
Yeah.
Great.
Wow.
But I feel was primarily built on the back of like CM Punk. You know, because they were coming in and interfering in his matches, and Punk was doing all of the mic work until they felt comfortable enough with Dean Ambrose speaking up. Man, these two have been pushed really hard, and I've been really enjoying it.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's interesting that you bring up the NWO, because to me this seems like, not that they should retread that story, but that there's just something here, particularly with these three guys coming from Japan, being just adored by their hardcore fan base. There just seems to me to be they should not screw this up. This should be some NWO style, awesome, hyper cool heel faction.
Need to take their time with it.
They are the heels everybody loves, and they are heels.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, to me, if they don't pull that off, it's a waste.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well, Vince has a terrible track record. But when he had the NWO come in and fight off, go against Rocky, it was just completely and utterly wasted.
Oh yeah. Oh, it was terrible.
The opening segment when like Vince says, "I've got to destroy my own company," and he turns around. And there's the NWO written on his
back
on
of his chair.
I got really excited. So it's Vince has a history of having great opportunity but fucking it up, greatly.
Royally.
Yeah.
Being,
Yes.
Oh God.
That could have gone on for a long time. The problem was with that one is that they didn't get any of the talent that genuinely mattered. They just had the guys that were still there, but in this case, they're getting guys that were important in the lineup of the Bullet Club, over in NJPW. So, yeah, I'm with y'all. To drop the ball on this one, that would be an awful thing to happen, because these guys have potential. They're good heels. The crowd can probably lock on and hate them real easily, rather. But I'd hate to see them misuse it like we've seen so many in the past.
Well, all right, I think we're at about an hour. We'll probably need to wrap it up pretty soon. Let's sort of go round table and sort of hear sort of the final thought for the week. We've got Extreme Rules coming up in a couple of weeks. Drew, let's go to you. Sort of your final statement for the week. What do you think?
I really hope that Extreme Rules is just. I really hope that they kind of bring it with that, oh God, what was it? Was it WrestleMania where Ambrose and Lesnar had the Noah's Bard match?
Yeah.
There was so much build up, and I was like looking at him going, "Oh, dude, this might be one of the bloodiest, most violent matches we've seen in a long time," and it was just nothing. And I really hope that, I'm not saying I want gore and everything, but just something a little more. I can't really think of what I'm trying to say, but I just need more substance.
If you're gonna call a pay-per-view Extreme Rules,
it better be extreme.
Yeah.
It better be extreme. And if you're not, then just don't book that pay-per-view.
Exactly.
Right.
Agreed.
I don't know how they can adequately have a PG thing, an Extreme Rules type pay-per-view in the PG era anyway.
Yeah, I don't understand. Well, Josh, what's your final thought of the week?
I'm looking forward to Extreme Rules. I'm just hoping that they don't water it down too much. I mean, if it's going to be Extreme Rules, make it Extreme Rules.
Yeah.
Don't pussyfoot around with the title and make us think, oh, someone got hit with a chair in the back one time. That's extreme. No, we've seen extreme. We've seen bloody matches. And so if you're going to call it that, honor the memory of what it was. I don't mean, I'm with Drew, I don't think that I want to see a gore fest, but at the same time, if it's Extreme Rules and there's no blood and not even one match, why even call it that?
Yeah. Jared, what do you think? We'll go to you.
Well, I think I really wish they would sort of retire the name Extreme Rules.
Yeah.
Only for like Josh said, that it sort of dishonors what extreme hardcore wrestling really sort of was in the mid to late '90s, and I guess what Combat Zone was still doing for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
When I read that Rolling Stone article with John Cena where he said that he wanted to return of blood, I thought, well, yeah, me too, man. But I don't think it's ever going to happen. I think that before the network, they probably could have done more extreme style matches. But now that they're sort of like selling the pay-per-views as being sort of part of the overall show too, that you're getting the whole package, that pay-per-views are going to be PG from here on out. But I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, because for the last month, I was at a really low place with wrestling the night of WrestleMania, this most recent one. But the next night, I got a great 3 hours. I got talent that I liked. I got storylines that sort of excited me. I don't think PG has to be bad. I think so long as they give us, heels and faces and they tell good stories with them, then we're going to be okay. And right now, I'm pleased to say that I haven't enjoyed a string of Raws this long in 10 years at least.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm with you.
Yeah, I'd agree. I have, that next night, I was so bitter after WrestleMania that when they had all these new debuts, I kind of couldn't help but think where the hell has this been for the last 6 months? If you know how to, and I'm not saying necessarily introducing new talent, but if you know how to book a show and you know how to give me 3 interesting hours, then why not do it at your Super Bowl? As far as Extreme Rules goes, I don't know. every time I see AJ Styles wrestle Roman Reigns, I think I'm just going to I'm going to enjoy it, but I'm going to be worried about what happens after. What happens after he just gets beat again and again and again, and he lost to Jericho at WrestleMania, and everybody can say, oh, he pinned Jericho the next night. So what? What everybody's going to remember is that at WrestleMania, AJ Styles lost. My worry is that all of a sudden he goes, back down the card and kind of, then they don't know what to do with him.
We've
I think he's making absolute best with what he's being handed. So that is the Heel Section podcast for this week. This has been, Drew Parker, Joshua Adcock, Jared Hegwood, and I was this week's host, Nick Bowden. We will return in the next few weeks, possibly with some new cast members, probably a new host, and we'll be talking about all the things you love about professional wrestling.